platform. Today, we are very excited to be hosting Endeavour Silver, a longtime client that we've worked with going back 15 years at least, and a great story. Traded on the NYSE EXK, and we're very excited to have Endeavour as well as their CEO, Dan Dixon, presenting today. With that, again, just house cleaning items, at the bottom of your screen as it pertains to Q&A, you have two options at the bottom of your screen. One is the voice audio direct option. And the second option is the type in feature. So if you have questions for Dan throughout the duration of his presentation, don't be bashful, and we highly recommend the type in feature. It's a really good way to get your questions off to Dan, and if you have any at the conclusion as well, don't hesitate there as well. So with that, and without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to the great and one and only Dan Dixon. And Dan, take it away for us.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. Thanks for having me, and thanks for those that are joining online. And it's always nice to come out and talk. I mean, it'd be nicer to be there in person, of course, but this is the world that we live in. I think in Vancouver, things are relatively getting opened up again after a couple false starts, so to speak. But I hope to do this in person next time we all meet. And
no doubt about it.
My understanding is the last meeting was, or last time Brad presented, my predecessor, it was September of 2020. And I'll hit the highlights of what's been happening historically in Endeavour. And then I took over as CEO in May of 2021. So I've been in this seat now almost the year. And I think it's been a fun first year, so to speak, but we've got lots done, and I think we got lots more that we're going to get done in the coming years. So it's an exciting story to tell. It's an easy story to tell. I touched on our 15-year relationship. I've been working in myself with 49 North through Endeavour now, like I say, for the 15 years. So it's amazing how time flies, and we've done a lot of great things over time, and there's the ebbs and flows and ups and downs, and who we are and what we do is generally the same. And we're a mid-tier silver producer. We've got our two high-grade underground veins, the Guanaceví mine in the state of Durango in Mexico, and then the other asset we bought in 2007, Bolañitos. We've been 15 years and 14 years mining at these two operations, which are pretty steady state, and it's what we've built the company off of. And it's been a very successful 15 years for the company, ups and downs, and that stuff's what makes it fun, and ultimately a challenge, and what we get paid for as a management group. And I think now how we've set up Endeavour, we've got a lot of exciting things happening. And in 2020, Brad would have talked about a pre-feasibility study that we put out on Terronera. We subsequently put out a feasibility study mid-year in 2021, and we're advancing that to a construction decision, hopefully here in this quarter, to basically bring in production that's going to double our production profile and cut our cost profile in half. There's not many mining companies and not many silver companies that can come to market and talk about cutting their cost profile in half, which I think is going to be important going forward, and ultimately continue to grow with doubling our production. With that, we've continued to make organic discoveries. We've built through the drill bit. Brad was an exploration geologist. The other founder of the company was an exploration geologist. We've done extremely well for our shareholders through that drill bit, and that's going to continue. But we're also looking at growth through acquisition. And in January, we announced an acquisition called Pitarrilla. It's also in Mexico. It's silver dominant. It really was considered one of the crown jewels back in 2010 to 2013 in the silver space. As kind of a proxy, we have 200 million ounces of silver equivalent. So silver and gold just all converted to silver in our reserves and resources. Pitarrilla alone has 525 million ounces of resources that was defined under its previous regime, Silver Standard, which turned into SSR mining that's focused on gold as opposed to silver, which created a great opportunity for us. Today, we have over $100 million in cash. Our working capital is north of or close to $150 million. So we are set up to take advantage of what I think is coming as a nice run in silver. And we've definitely taken a pause over the last 6 months, but we're set up as a company to really take advantage of that. So it's quite an exciting time. We've done a lot, like I say, over the past year. So there's our assets, mainly in Mexico. We do have assets down in Chile, exploration program down there. And we actually bought an asset in Nevada last year as well. It's a gold asset. It was opportunistic. I can touch on that in a bit. But again, what we're really built off of Guanaceví and Bolañitos. This year, we just put out guidance. That's what we built the company off of. The exciting thing, Terronera. Again, it's going to be about a 2-year construction phase when we have a formal construction decision. That's going to double our production and cut our cost profile in half. That's in Jalisco. It's an hour and a half away from Puerto Vallarta, which is a great vacation spot for a lot of Canadians. A lot of Vancouverites fly down there. And then with that, we also have our Pitarrilla exploration project. It's predominantly silver. 90% of the metal mix is silver. We grew that to about 40 million ounces of silver at the end of 2019 and leading into 2020. Because of COVID, drilling didn't go particularly quickly. In fact, we did very little drilling in 2020 and 2021 picked that up, trying to grow it to 65 million ounces of silver and ultimately put an economic study on that. And then again, Pitarrilla, our most recent acquisition that we're extremely excited about, getting a little bit more detail of that and then open up for questions. Sustainability has been a big part. We are on the New York Stock Exchange. I think everybody knows that. And what we've seen over the last, well, even 10 years, we've put out 8 years now. I think dating back 8 years of sustainability reports. In 2022, we've kind of refreshed our sustainability plan. Of course, we want to continue to increase our positive impact on our people in the community and people who work for us, and ultimately even beyond that. Continue to elevate what we do from an environmental standard in Mexico. We've always brought our Canadian standards, what were the Canadian standards, to Mexico. Mexico in itself's regulations are improving and increasing, but we always want to continue to improve on that standpoint. And then of course, it's a long, healthy, long-term business. And I always say profitability is first and foremost when it comes to that. Then we can take care of our people, we can take care of our planet. And I think everything we've done as Endeavour as a group from a sustainability standpoint over the last 10 years just translate to what's been being pushed from a regulatory standpoint and what we're seeing in the marketplace from an investment culture. And we've done it and we've easily transitioned to it and continue to improve on it. Our recent highlights, mainly we put out our guidance in January for 2022, but you look back at 2021, we did 8.3 million silver equivalent ounces. That was 4.8 million ounces of silver and 42,000 ounces of gold. So we had a very good fourth quarter. We revised guidance in 2021, and then we beat that revised guidance. Ultimately, we revised it upwards, and then we beat that. So we had a very successful production year last year. Mix of silver and gold continues to be 60-40 in favor of silver. So we are a primary silver producer. And ultimately, we don't have any base metals in our portfolio at this point. So everything that we mine is precious metals, which is a nice runway to be down for effectively our investment group. We did hold back some sales last year. When prices fall, we have the balance sheet now that we can hold back sales and be more flexible when we want to sell in it. We don't want to sell into falling prices. But again, everything that is of our business and how we operate is pointing towards what's the future. And again, we've used Bolañitos and Guanaceví to build the company. Now it's how do we take that next step, become a senior silver producer. And putting out the feasibility study on Terronera in 2021 helps that. We have been pushing Terronera forward. We had a $22 million budget last year, which basically paid a lot of it to advance it on procurement, long lead items, mobile equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And then this year we have an $11 million budget here in Q1. The main factor we're waiting for now to go into construction decision is we're trying to finalize some debt. So we've had big banks on site. Due diligence has happened in last year and into this year. And hopefully we can have an idea of what those terms look like, which we have a good idea what the terms look like. We can announce what those terms look like by the end of this quarter, and then ultimately make a decision to build Terronera from the board level. Also announced our definitive agreement we signed with SSR to acquire Pitarrilla. The purchase price was $70 million, $35 million in cash, $35 million in shares, and an NSR of 1%. Again, Pitarrilla, and I'll get into more details, one of the crown jewels of our space, one of the largest undeveloped silver deposits in the world. It's only an hour and a half from our exploration office, where we keep an exploration team. So we're excited, and it's something that slots in really nicely behind Terronera after the construction is complete. So very exciting times. And like I said, we also bought that asset in Nevada, and I can touch on that in a bit. So 2022, our outlook, the midpoint of our guidance is 7.3 million silver equivalent ounces. That takes into account the fact that we've actually closed one of our mines, the El Compass mine. It was a small asset we put in production in 2019. Cash costs going to be $9 to $10 per ounce of silver. All-in sustaining costs are taking into account all our corporate G&A, all our stock-based compensation, exploration on sites, and capital on sites, which obviously has a longer term. We're looking at $20-21 will be free cash flow from our mine sites this year. Sustaining capital budget of $34 million. Our development budget, which I touched on for Terronera, is $11 million, and an exploration budget of $13 million for 2022. Again, the exploration is important to us. We've always had great organic growth through exploration. We're excited about our exploration properties. I think we're going to continue to have success there and continue to have success at our operations with continue to extend mine lives, which we've done for, like I say, 15, 14 years of Guanaceví and Bolañitos respectively.
Quick question for you, Dan, from the audience. This is from Len in the audience. And his question was simply that he had heard that Chile has passed a law to nationalize all mining companies. How will that affect Endeavour's project there?
Yeah, they haven't passed a law to nationalize all mining companies, but we're definitely seeing Chile go to the left. The new regime that's come in is definitely more on the socialist side of things. They have not, in fact, I mean, at the end of the day, we completely own our concessions. We have 3 exploration properties down there: Aida, Paloma, Cerro Marquez. We actually have a couple other smaller ones we don't necessarily talk about publicly just because they're not overly material. But as of right now, they're currently ours. I don't see that changing. There are agreements, trade agreements between countries that would probably protect us against it. So it's not overly a concern. I think it's more of a concern of what we've been seeing in Chile from how the government, it's not just Chile, there's Peru's been like this as well. Even Mexico's moved a little bit that way. Is additional taxes. They talked about a royalty tax on copper companies. You can't just do it on one metal. You got to do it on all metals just because of the way the ore bodies are generally made up of. So it's a concern, but they haven't nationalized mining companies.
And we're talking more for you guys in the portfolio. The Blue Sky EXP company.
Exactly. For us, Chile gets very little value in our marketplace. Yeah. So the fact that we're a $600 million market cap, I would say the market gives us less than $1 million of value there. But we like our projects. We like the potential of them, specifically Aida, which is a silver project. It's in the Bolivian silver belt, just runs into Chile. At the end of the day, if we make a nice big discovery there, which we think could be there, then we'll have to deal with the regulatory issues that are coming in Chile, but it will still take the discovery, to be honest.
Right now it's low on the totem pole.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Happy to have the questions. I always think it helps kind of keep the audience engaged, and I'm always, anything's on the table, so.
For sure.
The Guanaceví mine, it's been our flagship for 15 years. 80% of its revenue comes from silver, 20% comes from gold. So again, no base metals. It does have almost a 7-year life still remaining. So we're going to be here over 20-25 years. 2016 to 2018 were some tough times for Guanaceví. We made a new discovery in 2019, and ultimately we've seen our production growth profile. You can see we've gone from about 1.1 million at the beginning of 2021. We ended the quarter at 1.6 million silver equivalent ounces produced. Costs have been increasing at Guanaceví. I think that's pretty general across all mining companies and all businesses for that matter. We are seeing inflation on supplies, whether that's underlying inflation because of wages or whether that's because of the global supply constraint. I think time will tell. I think everybody's well aware of the inflation story and why we're going to see interest rates increase. Of course, it's hit us, and just like every other mining company. But again, Guanaceví provides good free cash flow. The big aspect of Guanaceví that we've talked to a lot of people that are familiar with our story is the El Curso concession. Carlos Slim, he's one of the wealthiest men in Mexico, and one of the wealthiest men in the world for that matter. He owns a bunch of concessions around us at Guanaceví. In 2019, we cut a deal with him to lease some of his concessions. There's no upfront capital, but big royalty costs. And that was part of the increase in Guanaceví's cost profile, was increased royalties in 2021, and that'll continue in 2022 and for the foreseeable future. But the El Curso area that we're mining, which is about 60% of our production now, has a 16% royalty on it. But it's some of the highest grade material we've seen in the area. We've continued to cut deals with Frisco for more claims. You can see those wedges. We're now drilling out those wedges. And ultimately what it does is shows that we'll have a Guanaceví, a life of 6 to 7 more years with exploration upside. So ultimately we'll be at Guanaceví into the 20 years, which is phenomenal and fantastic. But it is becoming a higher cost mine because of the royalties and just the fact of where it is in its mine cycle. Same with Bolañitos. It's pretty steady state now, running around 600,000 silver equivalent ounces produced per quarter. Costs here are in the $70-$75 per ton range. Gives us free cash flow. We have probably less of a mine life at Bolañitos compared to Guanaceví, probably 4 to 5 years that we know of and we can consider with exploration upside. There's a number of companies that own concessions around us. We can pick up some more concessions. We could easily get past that 4 to 5 years. But again, more work to be done there. Still provides positive cash flow and what we built the company off of, which has been a great story. So that's the backdrop of Endeavour and how we've built the company over the last 15 years. And but ultimately, it's where are we going and how do we continue to improve and get better? And for us, the Terronera project is that asset for us. It doubles our production, cuts our profile in half. We've held this for since 2010, 2013. It's been 100% held to us. We put 2 different pre-feasibility studies on this project, now a feasibility study on it. And again, 7 million ounces. It will average about 6 million ounces of silver equivalent production over the 12-year mine life we've defined. The first 4 years of that's about 7.5 million ounces silver equivalent. That's where we talk about the doubling our production with 3.3 million ounces of silver and 33,000 ounces of gold. It's 1,700 tons per day underground vein system, an epithermal system, just like Guanaceví, Bolañitos. I think the biggest thing that's different between Guanaceví and Bolañitos is its cost structure. When this mine's in production at $15.75 gold and $20 silver, cash costs are 59 cents per ounce of silver. All-in sustaining costs are $3.24. So if you look at our cash costs of $9 to $10, $9.50 being the midpoint, all-in sustaining costs being $19.50 or $20.50 for 2022 at Guanaceví and Bolañitos. This project is going to be 59 cents per ounce of silver and $1 or $3 all-in sustaining costs. If you use today's prices, you're talking about negative cash costs. So all the gold pays for the silver, and the all-in sustaining cost per ounce of silver taken into your account, G&A out of Vancouver, all the capital on an annualized basis, you're looking at $1 per ounce of silver. So one of the most robust projects in the silver space, and then one of the few to come to market over the last 10 years. So that's why Terronera is going to completely change the shape of Endeavour to what we have. And the feasibility study, using again the 1575, has got a NAV value of 175. Today's price is NAV's closer to 300 million. IRR is 20% on base case. Today's price 30%. Payback period is 3.6 years base case, 2.5 years now. So it's a project that we expect to get financed here, as I say, through debt and bring into production for 2024.
Couple quick questions from
sure.
the audience again. This is from Dave in the audience. And the question is, clarify AISC, $21 question.
Yeah.
And then 7.5 million free cash flow. So if you can extrapolate a little bit on that.
Yeah, I'll deal with the AISC. So AISC is all in sustaining costs. And historically, and I don't know why this is the case, but I am an accountant. I always say to people, you need a balance sheet, income statement, and a cash flow statement to properly analyze the company from a financial standpoint. The unsophistication or the sophistication of the mining space, which one would you want to use? Always use cash costs as kind of a one bullet metric to explain how an operation works. And the cash cost metrics came in the late 90s when gold got down to the $275 range, and people wanted to understand if they could operate through those low prices. And cash costs is just your operating costs per ounce of silver or gold but it uses a byproduct. So the fact that we produce 3.3 million ounces of silver and 33,000 ounces of gold, that gold revenue is a credit to the cost of sales, and that's where the cash cost number comes from.
Got it.
Fast forward to 2016, maybe even earlier than that, 2015. Governments were going, look at your cash costs, it's $9. You guys are obviously making X amount of dollars. Cash flows are significantly large, and cash flows at that time were big. So then the World Gold Council came together, all the gold companies said, we want to come out with all-in sustaining costs, which is your capital intensity included in your operating costs, which again, you need a balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow to see it all, but everybody uses this all-in sustaining cost to know what it is per ounce silver or per ounce of gold. So it takes into account exploration dollars, capital dollars, operating dollars, G&A, and tries to put that all in from an ounce perspective. And it's a metric that a lot of people use. It does tell a good story. It doesn't tell you the whole story. From a free cash flow standpoint, for Terronera, I'm not sure where the 7.5 million came from, but ultimately at today's price, and I have a slide on it, at today's prices, our average annual after-tax free cash flow from Terronera is $52 million. Using the base case, the 1575 gold, you're at $40 million per annum. So a very robust project. And again, from a cost standpoint, it's in the lowest quartile amongst all silver peers or primary silver producing mines, and in the lowest decile when it comes to all-in sustaining cost amongst our peer group. And it just shows, like, once this project's in production, the amount of margins and the amount of cash flow that Terronera will spit off for the company, it's significant. And ultimately becomes a big portion, close to 60-70% of what the valuation of the company will be. And no different, I guess the other aspect to it is no different than Guanaceví, where we've had no more than a 2-year reserve life. Bolañitos, we've had no more than a 2-year reserve life. Here we have a 12-year reserve life that we can point to. But with that, Terronera itself is open along strike and to depth, and La Luz is an adjacent little vein, gold vein, that's open us along strike and to depth. So even though we have a defined 12-year mine life, we expect to be at Terronera vein 15, 20, 25 years before it's all said and done. Plus we have regional exploration opportunities there. And last year we put out a lot of results. The southeast of Terronera, there's a swarm of veins that we've been able to identify and drill. We're going to continue drilling those this year. You can see on the left-hand side of the slide some grades looking up to almost a kilo of silver. Not necessarily as thick as Terronera. Terronera, the vein itself is running about 5.5 meters in thickness. These would run about 1 to 2 meters in thickness, similar to what we're doing at Guanaceví and Bolañitos. So we've got over 25 concessions, over 20,000 hectares around Terronera, with over 50 known veins that have already been kind of mapped, and it's just drilling that. And we're going to drill there this year and continue to put out results. And not about growing the mine, it's about extending mine life. And like I say, being there 20, 25 years when it's all said and done. So we're very excited about Terronera, and that's always been the story on Terronera. The other big thing for the company and from our management group standpoint is we brought a gentleman in by the name of Don Gray, who's our COO. He'd come off building the Barraquita mine in Colombia for Continental Gold that was sold to a Chinese conglomerate. And previous to that, he was actually in Guatemala building the Escobal mine for Tahoe, which now sits in Pan American's portfolio. And so he joined us in 2020, the end of 2020. So he's been the COO for just over a year now, and ultimately involved quite extensively with the feasibility study. And that's basically his project to move along. And as I say, we've really been pushing on it. We spent $22 million last year to continue to advance it. Our goal is to have the formal construction decision this quarter, and then so we can be in production for H1 2024, because it's about a 2-year build process. It is $175 million to build this on initial CapEx. As I say, our balance sheet's in great shape. We have over $100 million in cash, $150 million in working capital, and we're working with banks to put about $80 to $100 million of debt in place on a project loan finance base. There's just our operating cost comparison. I touched on it, that we're in Terronera itself would be in the lowest quartile from a cash cost standpoint, and lowest decile from an operating all-in sustaining cost standpoint. So not many projects have come to market on a primary silver basis like Terronera over the last 4 to 5 years. Ultimately, you can count them on one hand, and we're excited that Terronera is one of them for us. So that will be our production profile. And ultimately, like I say, we've been busy over this last year with me in this seat now, and we've picked up some more projects, the Bruner project, the Pitarrilla project, and then we've continued to advance our Pitarrilla project. For us, Pitarrilla, as I said, it's one of the largest undeveloped silver bodies in the world. It has a historical resource of close to 525 million ounces of silver, and that's half the deposit. The rest of the deposit is lead and zinc. So on a silver equivalent basis, you're looking at almost 1 billion ounces of silver, which is just unheard of, phenomenal, and it was phenomenal to end up in our hands. And the fact is, Silver Standard turned its company into more of a gold company. Silver Standard changed its name to SSR Mining. They merged with a Denver company called Alistair. Alistair's management team took over, and they were rationalizing their portfolio. And they're effectively a gold company in, I think, 7 other jurisdictions. This was their only asset in Mexico. They ran a competitive process to sell Pitarrilla, and for us, we got in the game late, but we had some historical knowledge that we were quite excited about. And ultimately, Pitarrilla itself, and the 525 million ounces, it was conceptualized in 2012 as an open pit, a super pit, so to speak, doing 30,000 tons per day. But if you reverse back when silver was at $11, they ran a underground. 2009, they ran a pre-feasibility study looking at 3,000 to 4,000 ton per day operation, underground operation, just like what we do at Guanaceví and Bolañitos. We're going to probably conceptualize something like that here at Pitarrilla, but they did that in 2009. All those documents are publicly available, and NAV value is about 300 million. What we need to do is, under our Canadian regulation rules, we have to prove up that resource. So by the end of this year, we expect to come out with our own resource by verifying all the data, verifying all the log cores, et cetera, and then 2023 putting into the engineer's hands for an economic study to try to bring that along. But again, knowing what the historical resource was, knowing what the Silver Standard management team that ran it, we have full confidence in Pitarrilla, and it's been very well received in our marketplace from our peers and shareholders. So we're excited about Pitarrilla. It's in Durango. Our exploration team's in Durango, literally an hour and a half, 2-hour drive from the project. A lot of permits are already in place. They've already had an adit down in about 800 meters. They've got permits put in place. It is a phenomenal story for us. And once we get this project closed, which we expect to close the deal by April, May of this year, again, we'll put our exploration team on it and prove out that resource for 2022. The other project, the exploration project that's our most advanced, is Pitarrilla. I said we'd had 40 million ounces kind of defined here. It's in the state of Chihuahua, also in Mexico. It's an old producer. Used to produce about 4 million ounces of silver per year. There are a number of government plants and private plants in the area. We're building up the resource. We're trying to get to about 65 million ounces in our resource. Then we'll put an economic study on it planned for the end of this year. So again, more avenues continue to push forward and grow our pipeline and continue to evolve to try to get to that 20 million ounces of silver production per year. I think we've got a great pipeline now in the company that allows us to get there and have that vision to produce that. Our other project, Bruner, we get a lot of questions on Bruner. It's in Nevada. It was an opportunistic item for us. It was in a other Canadian junior company. I think they had defined 300,000 ounces of gold, 13 million ounces of silver. They're a junior mining company, and junior mining companies generally don't get to put debt on their books because they have no way to service that debt, no revenue. But this company, in fact, did. They put debt on their books and they ran into debt problems. Imagine that. So we helped out in the fact that we were able to take this off their hands so they could pay off their debt. And ultimately, again, in 2022, we have a $1 million and $1.5 million budget here to try to prove up that 300,000 ounces through 20 holes, looking at verified data, and come out with a maiden resource for us on this project. Now, there's a number of other opportunities in the area, and we'll look to consolidate that. But again, mostly it was opportunistic from our standpoint. It was a deal that we couldn't pass up just because of what was there and what the ultimate price of $10 million was. So again, building out our project and excited about it. And then lastly, I'll touch on Chile. our AIDA, it's a low sulfidation epithermal silver. We went to Chile about 12 years ago. We've drilled things and thrown them back. Paloma, we're currently drilling and almost finished drilling that. We're waiting on assays. And AIDA is our project that we expect to drill late this year. Both these projects are large, open pit scenarios, huge ideas that would elephant hunting effectively change the makeup of the company with finding some of these big things. And prior to 2021, Chile was a good place to be. And then as I think it was asked in the question, it is a little bit more nerve-wracking what's happening in Chile, just the way the pendulum's swinging towards the left. But again, it's not just Chile. Peru's been like that. Mexico's been like that. It's just navigating that as a management group going forward. So with that, we are on the New York Stock Exchange. Our market cap last week was about $600 million US. It's been a volatile couple weeks. We had a great year last year. We have great liquidity through New York Stock Exchange. I've touched on our balance sheet, cash over $100 million. We do have about $30 million of bullion that we carry at costs. That's why when I say our working capital is about 145 million, that includes the fair market value of that bullion. We held back metal sales just when prices started falling. We didn't want to sell into a falling knife and made that decision. We are some of the best leading sectors or best beta to the silver in our sector. And I think a lot you've heard in our development pipeline that we've picked up a lot of silver. And I think a lot of the silver companies you can see on this slide, Fortuna Silver, Core, Pan American, Hecla, First Majestic, all your historical strong silver names have all picked up gold assets over the last 4 or 5 years. In fact, when you look at Q4 production for Fortuna, it was about 20% of their production actually came from silver. First Majestic, they used to be market themselves as one metal, one country. They picked up Jarrett Canyon this past year in the United States, and ultimately 40% of their production actually came from silver. Hecla, Pan American, Core, they've been down in the 20 or high 20s now for a handful of years. So the whole silver space has completely changed, and we're one of the few companies left that we're over 50% of our production comes from silver. And as I say, right now we're at 60%. When Terronera comes online, we'll maintain that 60%. And one day Pitarrilla or Pitarrilla, that keeps us above the 50% profile. So if you're thinking about silver and you believe in the silver price, by all means, I think we're a great place to play it. With that, happy to open up for questions, look for questions. Like I say, anything's kind of on the table, and I'm always happy to help answer questions.
Well, great job, Dan, and thank you for that presentation. Couple quick questions. With the districts where Bolañitos and Terronera reside, is there a concern in terms of what is known as criminal activity in those districts, Jalisco and what have you? Is that been an issue for you guys at all?
Yeah, in the 15 years, I mean, it's been top of mind on a lot of programs, and we're mindful of it. For us at Guanaceví and Bolañitos, we've never had any issues, so to speak. If you want to go find it, I'm sure you can find it. I mean, you can find that in Vancouver all the time.
Right.
And it's concerning. The things that you read on the news, of course, it's concerning. It is a population of 110 million. And I haven't seen it, and staff generally haven't seen it. I'd say 9 years ago, we knew an individual in our accounting group, his cousin had been kidnapped. So I can't say I've never heard of it or anything like that. But for us, it has an impact.
Is that in Jalisco, or is that in Jalisco, or?
No, that was actually in the state of Durango.
Oh, it was. Okay.
But again, I don't know if it was a cousin of a gentleman that worked for us. You don't know what the whole story necessarily is, right? Like I say, if you're going out, and we always tell even our auditors who would be down in Mexico now, look, at the end of the day, if you don't be going out to bars and nightclubs or casinos at 2 a.m. in the morning. I mean, that's the time you're going to find that stuff. And
nothing good happens after midnight. My mom.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, it hasn't been an issue. We're always mindful of it. Back in the day at Guanaceví, there was a road we wouldn't take. We had to manage and drive around a certain highway. And you hear that from time to time in Mexico. For Jalisco and Terronera is an hour and 15 minutes away from the town of Puerto Vallarta and Nueva Vallarta, which is a massive tourist area.
Right.
funny enough, a group out of New York we had down there from a bank standpoint for due diligence, and we had to write up a write-up from the airport to the JW Marriott on the ocean, what the safety protocols were for security. And you're kind of like, well, there's 100,000 Canadians that do that drive in a little taxi every day.
Yeah.
But we'll write you up a security protocol for what
Well,
to do.
and you can go up to Punta Mita and Sayulita as well, right? North of.
Oh, I mean, at the end of the day, during the daytime, I think everything's relatively fine.
Yeah.
There are those stories where you hear about gunfights, and there was one
Right.
3 or 4 years ago outside of Mexico City, you just shake your head at. But again, it hasn't particularly impacted us at all at our operation.
Go to bed before midnight and don't drink the water,
Yeah,
right?
my mother's been telling me that for life.
There you go. Quick question on just the stock price. So recently, we saw that the stock was trading at a high on November 3rd at about 582. And what might be the trigger, if you could just extrapolate a little bit more on this, for the recent slide down to 342 today?
Yeah, I think really it's the overall hypothesis of silver. So we've seen silver fall from $24-25, just shy of 25 in November, down to 22.33 today. Maybe it's lower than that. And I honestly think it's a breather and it's a pause. I think we look at gold and gold prices more than silver. There's just a lot more literature on gold, and gold holding at 1800s pretty positive, and we got a pinch point at 1840, and I think it tested 1850 a couple weeks ago, and it came off that. So right now I think we're in our normal ebbs and flows of pricing, and obviously with the Feds announcing or basically pointing that they're going to have the rate increases, it's fine. But if you actually look back at gold prices as rate increases are actually happening, gold's actually performed relatively fine on that standpoint. And I think it's taking a step back and you go, okay, if we raise Fed raises by a point or even 2 points, you're still looking at negative interest rates, which is still mind-blowing in the whole sense of where inflation is and where I expect it to go. Obviously we already moved past this transitory, or is it persistent? I think everybody now says it's persistent. Well, how long is it going to be persistent for, and how bad is it going to be? And you're starting to see it across. We saw it in 2021 in our cost profile in itself. And I think it's going to continue in 2022, and we have to manage that. And we've built that into our cost profile, that we are going to see inflation. So we come out with relatively fair guidance, and always trying to beat that, of course. So I think we're in a pause. I think the trigger to move that and change that is really the sentiment in the silver space and the gold space. And then we'll see that run back up. And it's the timing. I think if you can get in and you're comfortable and you believe the long-term thesis of where silver is, these are great prices to get in at and take opportunity and advantage of it. For us, the other big thing internally, obviously having the financing package completed and the board's approval on Terronera, I don't think that's going to really move the stock. I think with how much we've spent and how much we've signaled to the market that Terronera is going to get built, I think that's all baked in. When you look at the history of development companies moving into become producers, there is a switch into the multiple and an increase, kind of an uptick in the share price as that switch happens. But that's 2 years out for us with Terronera, and I think people will want to see that we can execute Terronera and we can execute it on time and ultimately on budget. So there will be kind of a re-rating then, but in the short term to midterm, it's going to be about the silver price and moving from $22 back into the high 20s, which I think can happen by the end of this year.
Yeah, and this comes again from the audience, from Mark in the audience. On slide 14, the gold grade /GPT went down. I think it was minus 18%. Was this expected? And what do you think was the cause?
No, yeah, this is at Bolañitos. So this is variations in our ore body. So he's touching on from, it's actually an error in that slide. So, or sorry,
actually,
correct in that
13,
slide. It's on the
slide
slide, 18%, the 2.2 grams of gold per ton versus 1.8 in Q4 2021. So as you go through any ore body, you're going to have variations in the ore grades quarter to quarter, month to month, and obviously year to year. If you look at kind of what we have on average there, and that's really what drove the drop from 620,000 ton or silver equivalent ounces in Q3 to 580, but we expect that to come back up. Our plan for 2022 is going to be about 1.95. I think 2021 in itself averaged just shy of 2. So it's just that 18% drops, like I say, just variation in the ore body where we're at any given time. And from Q4 2020, which obviously had good gold grades compared to what we did in 2021, but nothing that we expect to be persistent at Bolañitos.
Okay. Just going back here in terms of, the production and grade has stayed fairly consistent at Guanaceví. Is the guidance moving forward still the same for you guys?
Yeah, at the point for Bolañitos and Guanaceví, there's steady state operations. We've been there, like I say, 15 and 14 years respectively. Guanaceví in our guidance for 2022 has slightly lower grades than what we actually produced in 2021. If you look back to our 2021 guidance, we had effectively lower grades in that. We always just give out the absolute number of ounces produced. And we exceeded that in plan. And that was because of our discovery of El Curso. We had wider drill spacing. We ended up getting better. We're always pretty conservative in our resource estimates. And so when we actually mined it, we actually got higher grades than what we had planned in 2021. And that's why we were able to beat guidance. We increased those grades a little bit in our reserves and our estimates for 2022. We do have a range on our guidance from 6.7 to 7.6 million ounces silver equivalent. Guanaceví, if it can outperform again on a grades perspective, we'll end up at that higher end of that range, which we hope to be at that higher end of the range. But because of how long we've been at Guanaceví and Bolañitos, everything's pretty baked in. We know what to expect for the next 3, 4, 5 years, and I don't see that changing unless we make a new discovery, which always we're working on. But generally, it will be what we're saying for guidance. We should be able to hit that pretty easily, and if not, beat it a bit.
So that it would hold true for Bolañitos as well.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing
Okay.
with Bolañitos.
Okay. And then with Pitarrilla, on the acquisition there, was it Silver Standard there before?
Yeah, so the background on Silver Standard, they were Silver Standard. They changed their name to SSR Mining because they really moved from being a silver company to a gold company when they acquired the Marigold mine in Nevada.
Right.
Oh God, that might have been in 2014 or 2014, 2015. And with that, Silver Standard originally was kind of a company that built ounces in the ground, made a lot of discoveries and kept on building their ounces. They had over 1 billion ounces in resources all underground without any operations. And so once they bought the Marigold mine, then they picked up another couple gold assets. And then Alistair, the group out of Denver, merged, and it was the Alice and SSR merged. And ultimately it was the management group out of Alistair that remained. And they rationalized kind of their portfolio going, okay, now we have these 10 assets. There's only so many assets you can manage in all these different jurisdictions.
Yeah.
And they said, look, we're a gold company. We're gonna sell our silver assets. They actually have a silver asset in Argentina, and because of Argentina's political climate and regulations, et cetera, getting money in and out of the country, a million reasons, they were not able to sell that Puna asset, or they didn't get the price they wanted for that Puna asset. But for us and Pitarrilla, it's something that will look attractive in our portfolio behind Terronera, with us having a development play and advancing Terronera. But Pitarrilla would take a couple more years, reconceptualize it. And like I say, it's one of the largest undeveloped silver deposits in the world. And our ability to be able to pick that up, I think, is a big coup for us and our management team. And then things that we can do. And we don't think it's going to be an open pit, super pit thing at this point, especially at these prices. But like I say, point to the 2009 pre-feasibility study done at $11 silver, and you see an underground operation just like what we do at other assets, and it becomes very viable. But we just got to put that work in, then we can talk about it publicly when that's all done.
Bob Quartermain was my first client in this.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So I've known him for a
So
long,
and then you would have known the silver standard story well then. So.
yeah, very well, very well. Last question from the audience and me is, where are you guys with your U.S. based institutional holding? I know that Van Eck is big time, but is there other institutions that are involved with the company at this point?
There are, but at the same time, Vanek, like you touched on, is our largest shareholder. And we're mainly held through the ETFs. I think with the institutional shareholders, they move time to time. I wouldn't even have the top off my head. The main groups that I work out of, it's actually out of London. Some of the larger ones that have a lot more questions. Out of Toronto and New York, there are some. They're always moving. I'm never particularly like giving out names because you never know it.
You never know. No,
3 months back, so I give a guy's name and then they're actually gone. But
yeah,
the biggest thing from we have more holdings through a retail base than institutional base.
Okay.
It's the affinity of Americans when it comes to silver and the retail crowd in the US. They love the silver story. It always kind of sits well with them and they push that. And compare to gold companies and a silver company, you always see more retail on the silver side than compared to a gold companies. But
so with your right now, where you guys are at, is there any imminently or in the next 12, 24 months, any more M&A activity in terms of you guys acquiring or selling in terms of the project portfolio?
We expect we're going to be here. We're not looking to sell the company. I think, like I say, the portfolio that we've built is very attractive. And I think the next step for us is more cash flow. And our VP of Corp Dev, Dale, who worked diligently over the Christmas holidays and November, December, January on Pitarrilla and did that. He's still busy and we're still looking at things. I think if you stop looking, you're not going to find it. And ideally, we put in cash flow, another operating mine that is significant to us, that would pair well with our development assets and our pipeline. But you never know what's going to pop up. We were shocked that Pitarrilla, we were able to get it, and we felt opportunistic. And as you saw with Bruner, it's a gold asset in Nevada. We think we could add a lot of value to, and the $10 million we can earn a real good return. And whether that ends up in our portfolio or somebody else's in 3 to 5 years, who knows? But we were very opportunistic and we wanted to take advantage of that. And so we're continuing to look, and we're looking. And I mean, the ideal thing is cash flow for us, and that would be there, but you never know what comes up. As far as selling the company, not looking to sell the company, I would like to say.
Okay, but like
10 months, so.
But like a Pitarrilla or a Terronera could be a spin potentially in the next 3 to 5 years?
No, Terronera and Pitarrilla will always be an Endeavour. There's primary silver assets that will build this company off of. Bruner, which has predominantly gold and it's in Nevada. If you can grow that, maybe it ends up somewhere else, but we are primary focused on silver.
Got it. Well, thank you again for your time today. Great presentation, great company. Always like working with you guys, and it's been a long history, and look forward to working with you guys more in the future. And thank you to everyone today for your participation and listening to the presentation by Dan, which was excellent. And if you have any more questions moving forward, you can guide those to myself and or Trish Moran at Endeavour Silver. I will provide you guys with all of that contact information. But Dan, thanks again. Great job, and look forward to it. And you guys are doing an outstanding job.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. And like I say, thanks for everybody listening. Always enjoyable. It's always good to come out and talk. And like I say, the questions is what makes it always worthwhile, and hopefully for the listeners, and it makes it easier for me too.
Yeah, and next time, hopefully we got you live.
Right? Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Let's get you live, bud, and in person. That's always much more fun. But
Much better.
at the end of the day, great job. And again, thank you to everyone, and look forward to working with you guys moving forward.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.